Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, U.S. embassies around the world are on alert after a Senate report on how the CIA treated prisoners after 9/11.
And I'm Peggy Pico. The report says agents used torture techniques. Why this report has San Diego's military personnel on high alert. Plus, NASA's Orion space capsule arrived safely in San Diego and is now on its way to Cape Canaveral for evaluation. What the flight means for the future of space travel.
Also tonight, students at San Diego State rally to protest rapes on campus as university police announce an arrest in an assault at a fraternity house. And Carl DeMaio is back in politics, but he's not running for office this time. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Senate investigators released a scathing report today on interrogation methods used by the CIA after 9/11. Methods described as torture by California Senator Dianne Feinstein, who says it's a stain on the nation's history. Our coverage begins tonight with the AP's Kelly Daschle.
In its 500-page report, Senate investigators released a damning indictment of CIA practices post-9/11, accusing the agency of inflicting pain and suffering on prisoners beyond legal limits and repeatedly deceiving Congress and the nation about the harsh tactics and their effectiveness.
The CIA program was far more brutal than people were led to believe.
The Intelligence Committee report documents tactics including weeks of sleep deprivation, slamming of detainees against walls, confining them to small boxes, keeping them isolated for prolonged periods, and threatening them with death. 3 detainees, including 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, faced the simulated drowning technique known as waterboarding. But in its most controversial conclusion, the report asserts the interrogation techniques didn't produce results.
At no time did the CIA's coercive interrogation techniques lead to the collection of intelligence on an imminent threat that many believe was the justification for the use of these techniques. The committee never found an example of this hypothetical ticking time bomb scenario.
The report, written by Democratic investigators, was forcefully disputed by many Senate Republicans and former CIA officials who insist the tactics worked in the immediate aftermath of 9/11 and helped in finding Osama bin Laden.
This helped us transform collection and analysis against the capabilities and intentions of a very dangerous organization, and we found out techniques and tactics and procedures of Al-Qaeda's core we would probably have never gotten without interrogation.
In a statement, President Obama called the past practices contrary to American values and said he will use his authority to make sure the U.S. never resorts to those methods again. Meanwhile, American embassies and military bases around the world tighten security amid fears the report could trigger attacks against U.S. interests. Kelly Daschle, Associated Press.
Peggy Pico takes a closer look at the enhanced interrogation report and its impact on San Diego.
Weeks of sleep deprivation, confinement to small boxes, the simulated drowning technique, waterboarding are 3 of many enhanced interrogation methods revealed in the report, which also found the CIA inflicted more torture techniques on prisoners than it had reported to Congress or the public. Here with more on the Senate Intelligence Committee report are my guest, Margaret Dooley Samueli with the ACLU of San Diego and Imperial Counties, and Los Angeles Times reporter Tony Perry. Welcome to Evening Edition.
Thank you.
Now, Margaret, for years, organizations have claimed that the CIA techniques were more aggressive than they were reporting and, in fact, were actually torture. What are your concerns when you have seen this report now? What are some of the major issues you're concerned about?
This report exposes a CIA run amok and a torture program that has violated domestic and international law, shattered lives, and harmed America's reputation around the country. It is as bad or worse than we had believed. You know, the ACLU has requested thousands of documents, but this is still startling.
So it was startling to you. Now, backers of the enhanced interrogation program, as they call it, say that these techniques were necessary to identify important threats at the time to the U.S. What is your response to that
These
argument?
techniques are immoral, unacceptable, and according to the report itself, ineffective.
Okay, and Tony, you were embedded with the Marines back in on tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. At that time, there was a different level of fear. What did you hear about the treatment of these detainees?
One thing I did hear was that it had been authorized from the highest levels that when you take a detainee, while you have to treat him with certain regard to the Geneva Convention, you can keep him in that first disorientation that all prisoners experience, that's the best way to get information, keep them disoriented and keep them worried about what's going to happen down the road. Now, these things that we're now learning about, the waterboarding, rectal feeding, rectal hydration, those I never heard of anything like that in the field. Those were more techniques we now know the CIA and contractors were using in foreign sites with suspected terrorists or terrorist hangers-on, not people in the field where you're taking prisoners and such. But there was a tendency to want to do what could be done as we moved towards Baghdad, for example, in 2003, to find out what information we could, who might be lurking out there, and were they going to hit us with chemical weapons, for example.
Something else that came out in this report is that this interrogation was done by contractors. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I'm not at all surprised by that. Both of these wars, Iraq and Afghanistan, have seen massive use of contractors. Blackwater is probably the best example, and we know that they've been involved in some things that have led to lawsuits and criminal action. That's how we go to war these days. We don't have unlimited manpower. We don't have a draft, and so we contract. A lot of them are former military, and they're more than willing to provide security. Now we know interrogation. Don't forget the CIA itself, its Inspector General, blew the whistle on a lot of this stuff and said that this had gone way beyond what was authorized.
And Margaret, post 9/11, the Bush administration said many times that the U.S. was not torturing detainees. When does interrogation techniques turn to torture?
The techniques described in the report released today and that Tony just mentioned, they go beyond what the Bush administration authorized. They go beyond what the CIA had admitted to doing. And the CIA has repeatedly, and for 2 years, tried to keep this report from being released. So the CIA has gone beyond even this gray area of what the discussion was about. These actions, these techniques are torture.
Well, Tony, U.S. embassies and military installations are on high alert with the release of this report, and there are thousands of Marines still stationed overseas. There are Marines that are based here. What does high alert mean in a nutshell for military personnel?
It means keep your boots very close. You may be hopping on a helo to go to a trouble spot. You're right. There are 2,000 Marines from Camp Pendleton, Miramar, 29 Palms. They're what is called a crisis response unit. They went over there about a month to 6 weeks ago. They're in Kuwait. Some of them are in Iraq. Others, I think, are on ships, or Bahrain, other Persian Gulf nations. They're ready in case something bad goes down, as it did at Benghazi.
Are there safety concerns specifically to San Diego, either against military who are based here or the borders or things like that?
Well, we have more military here than any place in the country, and if one is of an evil twist of mind and you want to strike at the United States military domestically, we're right on the map.
All right. And Margaret, I'll have to wrap with this. And do we know if these techniques are still being used, and what kind of accountability do we have now as far as either military or contracted people interrogating?
So when President Obama took office, he halted this activity, but the CIA and the senior officials that designed this program have not been held accountable. You've even had CIA agents destroying videotape. They were not held criminally liable. This report offers an opportunity for the United States and for this administration to not use this report to put it to bed, but rather to use this as an opportunity to hold people accountable and for a full accounting.
All right. Well, we have to leave it. There's a lot more on our website, kpbs.org. Margaret and Tony, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Homeland Security says San Diego's water supply is vulnerable to terrorist attacks. Today, City Council approved a $13.7 million security contract to protect our water infrastructure.
But now that there's less water, we have a much shorter amount of time where if the infrastructure that brings water to us from Metropolitan Water District, from the Colorado River, if that's broken, San Diego's in is actually a difficult position.
The contract includes security for dams, pipelines, and treatment plants. The guards are trained in water systems, chemicals, and surveillance. Student activists marched on San Diego State's campus today, presented administrators with demands related to sexual assault and the school's Greek system. And in the same afternoon, University police announced an arrest in a rape at a fraternity house. KPBS reporter Angela Carone joins us from the News Center. Angela, what prompted this march and sit-in?
Well, student activists say they were harassed by fraternity members during a recent anti-rape march, and they want the university to take action against the fraternities. It was a pretty healthy dialogue that happened today between the activists and the administrators. There was a sit-in, and it got emotional at times. Student Marina Butler was at the anti-rape march where the fraternity members allegedly yelled obscenities and waved sex toys at the marchers. And here's what she had to say during the sit-in.
Every single member that was in that house was a bystander and did nothing. I was terrified that night. SDSU did nothing. The SDSU police weren't there. The administration wasn't there. Nobody's asked me, like, what happened. Nobody's really tried to reach out to us.
Angela, what has the university actually done?
Well, the fraternities have voluntarily suspended all social activities indefinitely, and the university is investigating the harassment from the night of the march. An administrator in charge of the investigation told me they've been doing interviews and gathering information. Basically, they're going through the school's due process to find out what happened before they decide on what the consequences will be.
Did school officials have anything to say at the sit-in?
Yes, Jessica Rento, who is the school's Title IX coordinator, she sat down with the students and she said it's important to work with the fraternities to change the culture there and also to remember that sexual assault is a much bigger problem than just the fraternities.
Yes, we need to focus attention on the fraternities, but we also have to focus attention on the entire community because there's a comment from, I think it was the president at Vassar, that they don't have fraternities, they don't have athletics, but they still have rape.
There was also news today of an arrest made in a sexual assault case. Tell us about that.
Yes, an SDSU student was arrested today for sexual assault and false imprisonment. Police say the assault happened over the weekend at the Theta Chi fraternity house. There have been 13 sexual assaults on the SDSU campus since the start of the fall semester. 5 of them have happened at fraternities.
KPBS reporter Angela Carone. Carl DeMaio may have lost his bid for Congress, but he's not done with politics. He started a super PAC. Reporter Joe Girardi with our media partner iNewsSource joins us with more on the story. Joe, what can you tell us about this super PAC?
Unfortunately, we don't know a whole lot. The document received by the FEC last Friday is a simple 5-page form. It gives us the name of the super PAC, New Generation Leadership Fund. It tells us that it's registered to a P.O. box in Rancho Bernardo and that DeMaio is the PAC's registered agent and manager. The form doesn't give any indication as to how money raised by the group will be spent.
And remind us of the role a super PAC plays.
Sure. A super PAC is a political committee that can raise unlimited amounts of money from individuals and entities like corporations and unions. It can then take that money and spend unlimited amounts of it on everything from television ads to polls supporting and opposing candidates for office. Crucially, a super PAC cannot make direct contributions to candidates, nor can it coordinate any of its advertising or other spending with candidates.
So what might DeMaio's interest be in a super PAC?
Well, DeMaio didn't respond to requests for comment, so this is all speculation, but a political scientist who studies congressional elections suggested a couple possibilities. On the one hand, DeMaio could use the super PAC as a virtual second campaign committee for a 2016 congressional race. By starting the super PAC now, DeMaio would have plenty of time to staff it with loyalists and discuss strategy for a potential 2016 run before formally announcing his candidacy and having to cease strategy discussions with the group. On the other hand, DeMaio could sit 2016 out and use the super PAC to support other GOP candidates who then owe him support in whatever future races DeMaio jumps into.
iNewsSource reporter Joe Girardi. With more than 3 years of drought in California, the House approved a bill today to allow more water to go to the Central Valley and Southern California during storms. But moving it forward is an uphill climb. President Obama promised to veto the bill if passed, and the Senate has no plans to take it up in this year's session. San Diego gas prices continue to drop below $3 a gallon for regular. AAA says the average price at the pump has fallen 73 cents in the past couple of months. It's at the lowest level since October 2010. GasBuddy.com says the lowest price is in Chula Vista at $2.69 a gallon. The decline is a result of lower crude oil prices and less demand as we head into the holiday season. California's job market is expected to improve next year. Manpower just released a survey finding 22% of the state's employers plan to add jobs in the first 3 months of 2015. 6% plan to cut jobs, and the rest plan to hold steady. It is the strongest report since 2008, just before the recession. Apartment hunting is getting tougher in San Diego. Joining us to talk about the situation, KPBS reporter Eric Anderson. How tough is it, Eric, to find an apartment here these days?
Well, tougher than it was a year ago. The San Diego County Apartment Association says only 2.3% of the region's 400,000 rental units are available for people looking for a place to live. The vacancy rate was 4.1% in the fall of 2013. Now, that sounds like a super tight market, but in reality, it's not as tough as it might sound. There are still roughly 9,000 homes out there for rent because the San Diego rental market is so large.
Does that mean rents are going up as the vacancy rate falls?
Well, if supply and demand were the only thing that impacted the price of rents, that could be an issue. But president of the San Diego County Apartment Association, Alan Pentico, told me there are a lot of things that affect how much apartments cost. He says a red-hot job market can actually create upward price pressure. As it stands, the region's average rent was only up about $10 a month over the past year. He says their survey puts the average rent at $1,321. But he does say that the sinking vacancy numbers show the job market is performing well, and he says if the economy does start to head south, people will move back in with their parents.
Oh, my goodness. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson. San Diego County is launching a new adoption campaign to recruit more individuals as well as families. It's been especially difficult to find homes for foster children and their siblings, so the county is streamlining the process to make it more efficient and quicker. Like spinning on a merry-go-round, the process of adopting children can be a dizzying experience. The county's new family-friendly waterfront park outside the administration building came to life earlier this year with plenty of space to swing, jump, and slide. Now, supervisors are trying to improve the process of adoption after feedback from 200 families who went through it and recommended making it more clear and accurate with less paperwork to fill out.
Adoption is a burdensome process when you're trying to navigate through it. There's a lot that's required of an adoptive family. Even though there is no income requirement, you do not have to own your own home to adopt a child. And really it is about love and compassion.
Donna and Roland Elkins have adopted 3 siblings, ages 14, 12, and 11, with help from the county, after already raising 3 of their own kids.
And really for me, joining a support group, there were kinship support groups, and that was very helpful because other people that were going through that process could tell you, here's the best way to do this, or here's the class you need to take. And so I was very thankful for that.
Supervisors Greg Cox and Dave Roberts launched the Exceptional Families for Exceptional Children campaign a year ago. Its goal is to find permanent homes for more than 40 kids who've been difficult to place for various reasons.
This holiday season, we think it's a good time to remind people that there's a lot of kids that maybe aren't going to have the joyous holiday season that we'd like them to have because they haven't been adopted yet.
More than 325 children are adopted by families and individuals every year in San Diego County.
Is our new technology to let you talk and listen to dogs. That's Tuesday on the PBS NewsHour.
NASA's space capsule Orion was the first test flight in a project to get astronauts to Mars and eventually deep space. Peggy Pico is looking into the new phase in U.S. space travel, or the next phase.
Orion splashed down from its first 3,600-mile space flight off the coast of San Diego Friday night and was brought ashore last night before its transport to Cape Canaveral for performance tests. Joining me with a look at the future of space exploration are my guests, Stephen Snyder, Executive Director of the Reuben H. Fleet Science Center, and Francis French, Director of Education at San Diego Air and Space Museum and author of several books on space exploration. And welcome.
Thank you.
Now, Francis, you were at Naval Base San Diego last night when it came ashore. Describe that for us.
It was a wonderful feeling after the smoke and the fire and the drama of the launch in Florida that other people saw. This was kind of like that moment at the airport where a family member comes and everybody's really happy and proud to see them and embraces them in a big warm hug. It was just a very proud moment for San Diego. A lot of Navy people, NASA people, very excited to see this spacecraft come back to dry land.
And not open to the public. It was done in the middle of the night.
It's always interesting to be whisked into a naval base in the middle of the night and have the dogs check out your car and all that security stuff and be taken over to the secret spaceship. It was very exciting.
You know, NASA launched Orion last week for this flight. How high did this capsule climb and what was the purpose of this test flight?
This spacecraft went into deep space, so that's a good way out towards the moon to make sure that it could come back through the atmosphere at very high speed, also test out all kinds of equipment inside, make sure the parachutes work, make sure it could go through the radiation belts around our planet. A lot of stuff you want to do and test a spacecraft before you put people on it.
Yeah, and we're looking at the video actually of it taking off, and it's a very sleek design on this. And Steve, Orion's journey into deep space was a test, as we had mentioned, a test flight, and I understand it had more than 1,000 sensors on board. What kind of information are NASA scientists hoping to glean from this test flight?
Well, this is a test flight, so they want to check every system they possibly can as this capsule goes up. What goes on with the conditions inside the capsule, just outside the capsule. How does the heat shield perform? How do the electronics inside this capsule perform when we take it all the way out into space, through the radiation belts, out and back again, and then through, hitting the atmosphere at 20,000 miles an hour? How does it all perform all the way down before we think about putting anybody actually in one of these capsules?
Did anything go wrong, or was the mission considered a success?
They have been extremely excited by how well the system performed. I think everyone's been really pleased. Obviously, they'll take the capsule back to see if there's anything else that turns up in it. But so far, so good. It's a really, really exciting start.
Well, and Francis, a lot of people are familiar with the space shuttle program, so how is this different?
It's almost like going back to the Apollo design of having a sort of a gumdrop-shaped spacecraft coming back under parachutes, splashing in the ocean. In fact, I was kind of having flashbacks to some of the Apollo 13 movie I've seen and things like that. It looks so much like Apollo. It is a very simple, tried and tested design that we know is going to work. But inside the spacecraft, as Steve was saying, it's very cutting-edge 21st century electronics. So 60s on the outside and future on the inside.
I like that. No, Steve, some San Diego companies were actually involved in developing these many high-tech components that were in the spacecraft. Tell us who was involved and what else can you tell us about it?
Well, sure. There was companies involved, San Diego Composites, who developed some of the materials that are used between the two shells of the outer and inner shell of the capsule. There's a company that Rayotech that does windows. I think this is not just windows. It's not just down to the auto shop to pick up a window to replace it in. This is a window that has to be coated to be able to go out into space, handle the pressures, handle micrometeor fragments smashing against them. So a lot of high-tech materials went into this. Started in San Diego, and then, of course, last night, it all ended back in San Diego again.
So there's a real connection between the space program and San Diego. Do you anticipate it continuing?
Given the power of science and technology in San Diego, we're one of the top hubs in the country for this kind of work. That any science and technology, I would expect we'll be playing a major role in this as it moves forward.
Now, Francis, the cost of the Orion program is estimated in the tens of billions of dollars, but some people say we should spend money on things about Earth first. Why would this country and why should this country invest in space exploration?
This is about Earth first. This money isn't thrown away in space. This is money being spent on the ground, doing some very cutting-edge, high-technology stuff that we need to develop our technology. And this is a great way of doing it for something peaceful, for something that's future and forward advanced. We're also looking at using this spacecraft to go out and explore asteroids. Some of these asteroids could be a major danger to Earth in the future, and we want to make sure we know how to glance them away from Earth. What if an asteroid was coming right towards us and was going to destroy our planet? We want to know how to do that, and this spaceship might be the solution to something like that.
And if all goes well, is there a timeline when the first astronauts might be able to climb on board?
It's going to be many years. There's a lot of very careful test flights to do in the meantime, and with budgets, it's also a little slower than we'd like it to be. But it's going to take a while, but eventually, hopefully, we're going to see people going back out into deep space for the first time since 1972 and the last moon landings.
And I understand the goal is to get the astronauts back into space and onto Mars.
The idea is after essentially living in space, homesteading space with the International Space Station, we're finally going to go back out into space and do some deep exploration again.
All right, Francis French and Steve Snyder, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
A mixed bag in the weather department this week with rain in the forecast again. Cloudy along the coast, showers on Thursday or possible Thursday and Friday. Showers expected as well for the inland valleys. Temperatures dropping into the 60s on Friday there. Sunny in the mountains tomorrow, but rain expected by Friday with temperatures dipping into the 40s. 70s in the desert with a mix of sun, clouds, and rain on Friday. Here's what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. The city of San Diego tracks a lot of data on everything from transportation to trash collection, but it's not always easy to access. Tomorrow on Morning Edition, we talk with a man who will single-handedly crack open this treasure trove of information. And on Midday Edition at noon, we welcome two of San Diego's newest mayors from Chula Vista and Imperial Beach. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.